Hello, thank you for joining me today with the latest video series on current trends in adolescent substance use. This video will focus on alcohol and underage drinking. My name is Erin Teggy, and I am the Prevention Director at Peer Services. I've had the pleasure of collaborating with ETHS over the past 10 years in their substance use prevention and intervention work to support our ETHS youth. So, a little bit about Peer Services. We are a local nonprofit that focuses in substance use prevention and treatment. We have two locations, one in downtown Evanston and one located in Skokie. And we provide prevention services, early intervention services, and a number of different outpatient treatment options. So today our topic is on alcohol and underage drinking. So as we think about alcohol in our community, I think there's a number of things to think about as we think of the different social norms surrounding alcohol in our society that can absolutely have an impact on how our teens perceive alcohol use, which can then impact their behaviors. So we see alcohol use in many, many different ways throughout our society. When you're happy or celebrating, we use alcohol. When you're sad, you use alcohol. When you're stressed, you use alcohol. And so there's all of these messages that are getting out there to our teens that, say in all of these different situations, no matter what you're feeling, no matter what kind of day is, you can turn to alcohol. And so as we, go through the content today and think about how alcohol impacts our teens, especially with their underdeveloped brains, how are they interpreting these messages and then impacting that behavior? There's also a number of other perceptions and myths around teen use, whether alcohol is seen as a rite of passage or the thought process that we need to teach our kids to drink before they go to college, or that alcohol might be less risky than other substances, or if they're going to drink, then they should do it at home because then at least they'll be safe and they can be supervised. But again, what all of these kind of perceptions and myths and thoughts do is they tell teens that, hey, it's okay to drink alcohol when you're underage, or even though you're underage, it's okay to do this. And that is not the message that we want to send to them. We want to help them understand all of the risks and consequences surrounding alcohol use and how that can really impact their brain development, their schooling, their social life, all of these things. There's also a lot of messages being directed at our teens in the media. Whether that's from music or commercials or movies or TV shows, and it absolutely can impact the behavior of our teens. So a few statistics here listed on the screen that teens might see anywhere from 1,000 to 2,000 alcohol ads every year. Teens are 400 times more likely to see an alcohol ad than a PSA that discourages underage drinking. On average, a drinking scene is shown every 22 minutes on American television, and teens who watch more than 3 R-rated films per month are 5 times more likely to drink alcohol compared to those teens who didn't watch any R-rated movies. And so I think this definitely shows that our teens are exposed not only in their own personal lives with adult community surrounding them, but also in that media component in such a variety of ways. So getting into understanding kind of the basic facts of alcohol. And this is all information that we teach our teens. When, we at Peer Services go in and provide prevention education, as young as 5th grade, we talk about this stuff. So any of this information, please share with your teen. So when we're thinking about alcohol is the most commonly used substance among teens. So I have some data here on the right from the Illinois Youth Survey from 2022 about 30-day use among our 10th and 12th graders, as well as binge drinking. So we can see at that 12th grade level, around a third of teens are engaging in that alcohol use. And it is alcohol consistently over the years is the most commonly used substance compared to e-cigarettes or cannabis or prescription drug misuse. So when we're thinking about how alcohol affects our body, we measure this by blood alcohol concentration. That is the amount of alcohol in someone's system For example, for adults, that legal BAC is 0.08. And so as we're looking at how alcohol impacts the body, how it can impact and cause, someone to be under the influence, a lot of this is based off of that blood alcohol concentration. And one thing to think about how our bodies process alcohol, our body is able to metabolize about one standard drink every hour. And we're going to get into that a little bit more in the upcoming slides. So one of the other big things that we do talk about with teens is binge drinking. So binge drinking is when someone is drinking a lot in a short period of time. And really kind of that threshold is once you hit that 0.08 BAC, that's how someone gets, engages in binge drinking. They're going to get to that level and higher. So what that kind of looks at and how that plays out is 4 more drinks for females within 2 hours and 5 or more drinks for males within 2 hours. For youth, it is slightly less, so around 3 drinks for girls and 3 to 5 drinks for boys, depending on size, weight, lots of other factors. And we do have those binge drinking statistics as well up at the top. But what we do see is a lot of times when teens are drinking, they're engaging in binge drinking. And so they're bringing that blood alcohol concentration, up to that 0.08 level and higher. So as we think about alcohol, this is another one of those facts that we talk about all the time with teens, in understanding what a standard drink is. So a lot of times we pose this question: a 12-ounce beer, 5 ounces of wine, and 1.5 ounces of liquor all contain the same amount of alcohol. Is that true or false? So you can, take a second, think for yourself. But the answer is true. That is what we consider a standard drink. And so a 12-ounce beer, a 5-ounce glass of wine, and 1.5 ounce of liquor all contain the same amount of alcohol. And that equates to, 0.6 fluid ounces or 14 grams of pure alcohol within that drink. Obviously, the volume of the liquid is different, but when we look at that alcohol content, that percentage as it relates to the volume, what it ends up being is that, 0.6 fluid ounces of alcohol is considered a standard drink. A lot of what we see in society is more than a standard drink. And, thinking back to the slide before, when I mentioned that our body processes one standard drink per hour, this is what we're talking about here, that 12 ounces of beer, 5 ounces of wine, 1.5 ounces of liquor. But again, as we look at those images of what's more than a standard drink, we'll take the beer, for example. So as adults, if we go to a restaurant, if we go to a bar and we order a beer, we are likely automatically served a pint. And a pint is 16 ounces. So automatically, us as adults are getting served, 1.25 servings of alcohol in one cup. And then if we look at different cocktails or a lot of the hard seltzers and malt beverages and different coolers that are out now, a lot of time those automatically are more than what's considered a standard drink. And so as we think about, those teens who are engaging in use, they are likely consuming beverages that are considered more than a standard drink, which is what then increases that likelihood of binge drinking. So then when we look at kind of how all of this plays together, we do look at all of the different levels of impairment. And so with alcohol, it is pretty consistent in terms of body weight, the number of drinks, and then how that equates to your blood alcohol concentration. And there's pretty clear behaviors and symptoms associated with all of these different levels. So when we look at the chart on the left, this kind of goes through how many of those standard drinks, again, 1 drink in an hour, and body weight, because that body weight does impact the BAC. So as we look at, different weights, different amounts of drinks, we can see how quickly a blood alcohol concentration can increase. So when we look at just 1 drink, and one thing I always tell teens is just 1 drink will cause some impact. It will cause some level of impairment. It may be still in this kind of first zone that we call the buzz zone. So this is where we first initially feel those feelings of warmth and relaxation and euphoria or feeling good. But also, judgment also starts to go at that point. And for our teens, as we think about their underdeveloped brain and specifically that prefrontal cortex, where judgment isn't, where judgment comes from, that judgment is one of the first things to go when alcohol is in the system. So that is going to then impact, our teens, later decisions while they're drinking and, potential risky behaviors that come from there. So then as you can see, as we kind of move up the number of drinks in that hour time frame, very quickly getting into that drunk zone. So, they're gonna lose, muscle control. Their reaction time is going to be impaired. They're, gonna lose some control over their emotions and have mood swings. And, this is where we do see that legal limit for adults. And then as we move up to this 0.2 to 0.15, which could be 3 drinks, 4 drinks, depending on the person, this is where we all of a sudden start to see vomiting, an increased risk of injury, very poor decision making, teens engaging in behaviors they would not otherwise. And then as we move up this 0.15 to 0.25 and then 0.25 plus, whether that's 4 drinks, 5 drinks, 6 drinks, etc., in a short period of time, this is where we really see some of those medical issues come into play. Blacking out is likely, not going to remember what's going on. Loss of consciousness is possible. Potential risk of choking on vomit, because if you're unconscious and vomiting, that's not a good combination. And then in this last medical emergency zone, this is absolutely where we're seeing high risk medical emergency situations. Again, that loss of consciousness, passing out, that vomiting situation, alcohol poisoning, which could, if not treated, could potentially lead to death. So it can very quickly escalate to that. So you can kind of see and even judge your own behaviors on, okay, this is how much I weigh, this is how many drinks, etc. And remember, our bodies process about 1 standard drink per hour. So that's why within a couple hours, if drinking multiple drinks, that's how we see this impairment happen. So what might this look like? Let's say your teen was out at a party, and if they did engage in alcohol use, we might see a number of these behaviors. Their speech is going to be impacted. Are they slurring their words or can't keep the train of thought together, or they're just kind of rambling on and on and on? Their balance and coordination is obviously going to be impaired. So are they unsteady or bumping into things? I really like the last one, the difficulty opening or closing doors, because that does actually take some coordinated movement. So that could be an indication. Are they coming home and they can't get the door closed or whatever the case may be? Then we're looking at lots of different things with their behavior, which can range significantly depending on the person. Are they drowsy or sleepy or kind of withdrawn? Or are they completely opposite and being loud and boisterous? Maybe argumentative even, or overly friendly. Definitely lots of different examples of what can happen if someone's under the influence from a behavior standpoint. So as we think about what kind of the effects are and how alcohol does impact our teens and impact their health, there's a number of things that are impacted. So apps, definitely, like I mentioned, with judgment being one of the first things to become impaired, this can lead our teens to making some really poor decisions and engaging in some risky behaviors, things they wouldn't do otherwise, whether that is engaging in drinking and driving, or maybe, following through on a dare from a peer and, potentially getting hurt or that increased risk of injury. This could also include risky sexual behaviors, doing things, with a romantic partner or somebody else that they would not otherwise do, because that judgment and that decision making is one of those first things to go. We do see that alcohol use and drinking is associated with lower academic performance. Especially ongoing regular use, that is going to impact that brain's development. It's going to impact their school performance. It's going to impact their learning, their memories, etc. It also impedes the ability for them to recognize and respond to dangerous situations. Again, that judgment is impaired. That ability to assess a situation is impaired, which could then put them in some significant situations. Like we talked about, this blacking out situation. And when a teen blacks out, when anybody blacks out for that matter, it is blocking memories from short term to long term. So they're going to be forgetful. They're not necessarily going to remember things that are happening. And we also do know that the earlier that people start drinking alcohol in their teens, the more likely they are for some of those long term consequences, like addiction, like measurable impacts on their cognitive function, their memory, school performance, etc. Also, we see a association between alcohol use and the increased likelihood of that addiction, like I had said, as well as an increase with some different mental health challenges like anxiety or depression. These are some other things that we might see as consequences of alcohol use. There's a lot on this slide, definitely things to look out for. Physical problems, we might see that hangover or illness. There could be legal problems, not only with law enforcement, but if someone plays sports, they might become ineligible for that sport. There could be social problems. There could be increased risk of violence, misuse of other substances, because if they're under the influence of alcohol, they're not thinking clearly, assessing the situation, making those good decisions, they could then try another substance and misuse a different substance. So there's a lot of different things that can happen with our teens when they are using alcohol use, not only while they're under the influence, but longer term as well. So another important component in alcohol is understanding some of the kind of trends and products that are out there now. There's a lot of alcohol products out there in the world. And one of the biggest trends that we have seen lately over the past few years is the different types of alcohol that are very appealing towards youth. So there has been this whole trend over the past few years of all of these different types of seltzers, or ciders or things of that nature, which for the adult population might be a great thing. People might enjoy them. However, what these products do is a lot of these products are sugary, do not taste like alcohol, have high, concentrations of alcohol in them. And what we're also seeing is there are a lot of beverage companies that have never been in the alcohol industry now have alcohol equivalents. So you can see here on the screen, we have Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew now has alcoholic beverages. So if your teen is a Mountain Dew fan, now all of a sudden there's an alcohol product from Mountain Dew that is likely targeting them. Then we have our Simply company that makes, Simply lemonade, Simply orange juice, all those things. They now have alcoholic beverages. Sunny D has alcoholic beverages. So there's a lot of different companies that make drinks that our kids might consume, not, they're non-alcoholic components, but now they have those alcoholic ones. And so a lot of these products, between the flavors, the colors, the sweetness, are very attractive towards youth and can, kind of encourage our youth to drink. So if we look at some examples of some of these products, and another trend that I'll get to in a second, if we look at the Four Loko, so that's a 23.5 ounce can, that is 12% alcohol by volume. And so if we look at, how many ounces are in there with that alcohol percentage, what we're seeing in that one can is over 4.5 shots of liquor, or more than 4.5 bottles of beer, or around 4.5 glasses of wine just in one can. So a lot of these seltzers, a lot of these products that are out there, like that Beatbox brand, they contain, 3, 4 plus servings of alcohol within one can, one carton, one bottle. And so if a teen is drinking this, they are consuming a lot of alcohol in a short amount of time. One of the other things that we have seen, and I will say mostly at the college level and kind of that young adult level, that doesn't mean that this can't happen among teens, but I think it is important to know what it is the Borg. So Borg actually Borg actually stands for Black Outrage Gallon. So what they do is they take a gallon, a milk gallon that's empty or a gallon of water, whatever, and they, fill it halfway up with water. Then they add 26 ounces of hard liquor. So vodka, rum, gin, whatever hard liquor that they're choosing, 26 ounces, which is approximately 17 shots of alcohol. And then a lot of times we see them also add some sort of flavor enhancer. So they might take some of those, different powders or liquid drops that you use to make flavored water, and then they add it to this gallon just so that it tastes better, and tastes fruity or whatever flavor that they want. And then, that's their jug for the night. And that's what they take, with them and are using to drink from throughout that night. But if we think about the fact that it is 17 shots of liquor, even if they're drinking over the course of 6 hours, that is still way more alcohol going into their system than should be at all. And so this very much encourages that binge drinking behavior. It is really interesting because on social media, there are lots of different videos about porks. And a lot of what the videos are sharing with youth is that this helps you not engage in binge drinking because the liquor is diluted with the water. But at the end of the night, if they are consuming 17 shots, I don't care how much water is in there, they're taking 17 shots in a matter of 4 or 5 hours, they are absolutely going to be impaired. They are absolutely engaging in binge drinking, absolutely going to be impacted significantly just by the amount of alcohol that's in these things. So one of the other things that we sometimes see is alcohol being mixed with energy drinks or specifically with caffeine. And this can be super tricky and also risky because a lot of what the caffeine will do is it will mask the effects of the alcohol. And so the user doesn't feel the effects of the alcohol as they would otherwise. And so this can really result in the person drinking more alcohol and being more impaired than they actually realize. And so we see, situations when people are mixing alcohol and energy drinks, we see an increase in risky behaviors, hazardous drinking practices, worse hangovers, definitely some dangerous health risks because of, the amount of alcohol in their system. And it definitely increases that risk of addiction among young people. Also, what can happen if you mix alcohol with other substances? So you may have a teen who is legitimately prescribed a medication, whether it's Xanax or maybe Adderall or Ritalin, or if they're prescribed an opioid for some reason, if they just had surgery or something like that and they're taking an opioid. Alcohol mixed with a lot of these substances is not safe and can cause some pretty significant health issues. So if alcohol is mixed with a depressant, so depressants like Xanax and alcohol both have the same effect on our respiratory system, especially. And so we can see some issues that we have when those two things are combined, when alcohol and depressants are combined. We see a greater impairment in coordination. We see quick onset of dizziness, memory loss, potential death, etc. Then if we look at stimulants, again, similar to caffeine, because caffeine is a stimulant, when stimulants are combined with alcohol, those stimulants mask the effects of the alcohol, which then increases potential use and potential risk for that overconsumption. Then when we look at prescription opioids, combined with alcohol can be very, very dangerous because opioids slow down your breathing, slow down your heart rate, etc. And so does alcohol. That is why, as an adult, if you're ever prescribed an opioid, they always tell you do not drink with alcohol because that can lead to a potential opioid overdose, which could result in death. And then lastly, there is a trend out there. It's called getting crossed or cross-faded, something, or, that type of terminology is when you're mixing alcohol with THC products or cannabis products. And so the interesting thing with cannabis and THC, your body responds differently. Based on which substance is in your body first. So if THC is in the bloodstream first, that does also kind of decrease the effective or decrease the perception of how impaired someone might be. So they might then drink more alcohol, similar to a stimulant. THC is actually also a stimulant. So, but then if you have alcohol in your system first, and then you add THC to the mix, what that does is the alcohol actually allows your body to absorb more THC at a faster rate. So any combination, no matter what comes first, it can absolutely result in some pretty risky behaviors, impact on memory, judgment, etc. So now, if you are potentially concerned that your teen might be drinking, there is a self-assessment that they can do, or things to ask to kind of gauge what their use might look like. This is called the craft assessment. And with this particular assessment, you can ask and walk through these 6 different questions to try and get at some of the consequences of use. So definitely that risky behavior of riding or driving a car while under the influence of alcohol or cannabis or other drugs is a good question to ask. Are they engaging in that risky behavior? Are they using to relax or feel better about themselves, to fit in? Are they using alone? Have they forgotten things while under the influence? Have have friends or family told them that they need to cut down or stop drinking? And have they gotten in trouble, whether with law enforcement or at school, or what have you? Have they, are there some of those consequences from their use? And what we see, if they answer yes to 2 or more of those above questions, that is indicative that there is a need for further assessment. So, reaching out to a treatment facility, getting assessed to really see what's going on with their use and how we can help and support them. The little statistic at the top of the screen does show this is from the Illinois Youth Survey, that around 21% of suburban Cook County 12th graders have experienced 2 or more of these consequences. So 1 in 5 seniors in high school, in our community, surrounding community, are answering yes to more than 2 of these, which is definitely shows a need and a concern for their alcohol use behaviors. So as we think about those contributing factors for substance use, like we talked about at the beginning, there's all sorts of things in the media, all sorts of things in advertising that really portrays alcohol in a very positive way. You can be popular, it's fun, it's good for your health, it's independent, it's glamorized, lots and lots of things. And then as we think about why our teens might use, they are trying to fulfill those needs. They are trying to, take risks or feel older or fit in or relax, or self-medicate and cope with different, mental health related concerns. And so, all of these things combined, what they're seeing in our society, what they're seeing in the media, plus their own individual motivations can increase that desire to use alcohol. And so when you're talking with your teen, it is really important to discuss how they can meet these needs, because these needs are very real that they're trying to do, very real to want to fit in and belong. It's very real if they're trying to cope with mental health. And so we want to make sure we're having conversations and talking with them about how to meet those needs, but in healthier ways. And again, we always want to then talk about the motivation not to use. When they choose not to use, why is that? Is it they want to be in control of themselves? They know it's bad for their health. They don't want to get in trouble. They don't want to lose extracurricular eligibility or jeopardize their future plans. So really asking specifically why they choose not to use. So definitely start talking to your kids now about this. Really create that environment of honesty and respect, because we want our kiddos to come to us in any situation at any age. And be sure that they know they can go to you for any sort of information regarding this topic or any other important topic, and that you can be that resource for them. There are some other really great resources here at ETHS as well as in our community to help support parents and teens surrounding this topic. So check them out if you need to. And there are also some other really great resources online. I will say specifically for alcohol, Ask, Listen, Learn is a really great resource, especially if you have younger kiddos. Partnership to End Addiction has a ton of great resources as well. Talk They Hear You is a wonderful app and program about having these conversations with your teen on this topic. So feel free to Google any of those and check them out. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video. Definitely check out our other videos on cannabis or e-cigarettes or fentanyl or how to talk to your kids on all of this stuff. But if you have any questions or need more information, please reach out to me or anyone else at Peer Services using any of the information on your screen. Thanks.